oh please, let my child make good decisions next year when they are at college. I get it. I have a senior in high school too, and I'm already terrified that my son is facing the world. But as an impactful parent, I also know that I have to let go, and I can't avoid the difficult conversation of sex, drugs, and peer pressure. And this goes for you too, because being a good parent means preparing our children to leave the nest. And part of that preparation is having that uncomfortable talk about what inevitably lies ahead so that your child can be ready. Why? Because statistics show that changing environments, being alone, or feeling isolated can make people more vulnerable. And college has the potential to hit all three of these marks. This vulnerability is amplified by a young person's need to be liked and fit in and make friends. Plus, if your child already has low self-esteem, then the risk is even greater. Now, I know what you're thinking. I've already had that birds and bees talk with my child years ago, and we've talked about drugs and alcohol too. Well, I'm here to tell you that you need to take those conversations a little bit further. Now, it is essential to talk about the social responsibility of sex and drugs. Things like, what does responsible consumption of alcohol look like? Or responsible sexual activity? How do you set boundaries? How do you deal with peer pressure? Yeah, I know, tough conversations. So you might be saying, how do I talk to my teenager about sex, drugs, and peer pressure? Well, here are 10 tips for what to say and how this conversation should flow. So, how do I talk to my teenager about sex, drugs, and peer pressure? Tip number 1. Start by telling them why you're sitting them down. Say something like, being in a new environment where you want to fit in, it can push you to do things for the approval of others. But you're an adult now, and ultimately your responsibility is to make good choices, so I want to help you get ready for the new peer pressures that you're about to face. How do I talk to my teenager about sex, drugs, and peer pressure? Tip number 2. Practice saying no. Tell your child that in their head or out loud or with friends, practice being assertive and saying no. You got to role play it out in your mind. How will you say no and what will happen? Kids forget that they also have to talk not only with their mouth, but with their body, because it is body language that drives the point home. So practice not only saying words, no, I don't want to do that, but also standing tall and feeling confident. How do I talk to my teenager about sex, drug, and peer pressure? Tip number 3. Tell them to make a plan before they get into that bad situation. Decide what you will do if you're at a party and everyone wants to drink or do drugs. Decide what you will do if that guy touches you without asking. Decide what you will do if you're intoxicated and need to get home or out of a situation. Decide what you will do if your boyfriend or girlfriend wants to take the relationship to a place that you're just not comfortable with. Please discuss lots of different scenarios with your child and then explain to them that having a plan before they need it helps to keep them safe and sets them up for a more successful outcome. How do I talk to my teenager about sex, drugs, and peer pressure? Tip number 4. Have your child decide their limits before they even walk out the door. What are you willing to do? And what are you wanting to avoid? Because knowing your boundaries before you put yourself into that environment where peers can pressure you and want you to change your mind will actually help you keep your values and your integrity. You do not want to make decisions at the moment. That is how regretful actions happen. So know your boundaries before you even step outside the door. How do I talk to my teenager about sex, drugs, and peer pressure? Tip number 5. Tell your child to be ready to leave. Have a plan for leaving if the situation gets uncomfortable. Now, hopefully you'll be with people who can do what they want and still respect your choices. But let's face it, many times this isn't the case. You have to leave, sometimes even when you don't want to. And parents are no longer an excuse to get you out of those situations. So have another reason to leave, ready to go. Maybe it's a friend, or maybe it's a lie about not being able to drink because you're on a medication, or it doesn't matter what really the excuse is, but talk to your child about possible excuses right now so that they don't fumble with their words later on. How to talk to your teenager about sex, drugs, and peer pressure. Tip number 6. Tell them to pick their friends wisely. Find friends with the same values and then stick together. Using the buddy system is a great way to get out of uncomfortable situations. Have a friend that you trust, and then be willing to watch over each other all the time, even just for the night. How to talk to your teenager about sex, drugs, and peer pressure. Tip number 7. Tell them to trust their gut. Yeah, tell your child that if it does not feel right, then it's not right. Your instincts are one of the best indicators for trouble. So trust yourself and your intuition. How do I talk to my teenager about sex, drug, and peer pressure? Tip number 8. Consider how your actions can put you in a bad situation. Please remind your child that they have the power to influence their environment. Their choice of clothing, the way they act, what they consume, what they say, who they hang out with, all those things play a part in how their environment is created. There are many moving parts to each situation that we put ourselves in, but ultimately, little decisions can make considerable influences on how the day plays out. So, do not discount those small decisions that have the power to change outcomes. How to talk to my teenager about sex, drugs, and peer pressure. Tip number 9. Tell them it's okay to be alone. And standing up for yourself, it can sometimes be lonely. But the world's most extraordinary people had to stand alone in their convictions before anyone would accept them or even follow. Reaffirm to your child that it is okay to go against the grain and be alone. So tell your child that being alone with integrity is much better than being accepted and regretting their actions. How do I talk to my teenager about sex, drugs, and peer pressure? Tip number 10. Show your child that you trust them to make the right choices and that you have complete confidence in their future. This is important. A mistake that many parents make is having the same conversation, but with a tone of, oh, I know you're going to mess this up. No, instead, keep telling your child that you believe in them and that you're just having this talk so that you can feel better about being a more impactful parent, not because you just don't trust their choices. See, your child is more likely to make better choices when you believe in them, because you'll be raising their self-confidence and their standards. Low self-confidence can lead to a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then again, it makes them more vulnerable. Now, I know this is not the conversation that you want to have, but it is a conversation worth having. And if these 10 tips today weren't enough, I actually have more for you, because today I am giving you a free PDF checklist of 50 life skills that your child needs to learn before they leave home. So get your free PDF by going to theimpactfulparent.com/50things. So before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the Impactful Parents YouTube channel, like this video, and follow the Impactful Parent on social media, because you got this. And I'm here to help.